the Ohio State fans are now kind of starting to get a little bit feisty, like you're saying, with Ryan Day. And this happens in the game. I mean, this Harbaugh has had his own experience with this early in the rivalry when, again, like Ohio State was dominating. And if you go back and look at those couple of Ohio State wins over Michigan right before Michigan started this win streak, I mean, Ohio State was just killing them. You have the Dwayne Haskins game in there where they put up 60 plus. The next year was another 50 plus point victory. And, you were saying last week as well, too, while we were watching the game, that you kind of think that Ryan Day is underrated in general. But, I mean, you look at the record now, it's been really great against all of these non-top opponents. I think he's 54-7 or something. I mean, it's
Yeah, I
something
think
pretty
he's
close to
56
that.
and 7.
56-7 against the non-big games. But like you said, lost the last three to Michigan. Of course, he's lost a couple of college football playoff games in there as well. So, I mean, you said he was underrated, and he's losing to Michigan. So I'm, I'm not like not a Ryan Day hater per se, but you did say that he was an underrated coach. So now that he has officially lost to Ohio or lost the rivalry game 3 years in a row now, do you think he still is underrated at all?
Yeah, and I think even more so because it's one of the things where you got to look at the record, the whole body of work. He's has almost 90, almost he's at 88.9% winning percentage, and like you mentioned, 7 losses, 3 of them now to Michigan. One of them was also in the college football national championship. I think that was the one with against Georgia, one of their insane defenses, and then let's see here, the other one, and then there was the Fiesta Bowl in 2019 against
in the championship they lost to LSU.
Oh yeah, that was against LSU. Now that let's see here, college football national team that year
Or no, they
was
lost to Georgia.
no,
Georgia,
that was
sorry.
Georgia. Was that Georgia? Or was that? I think it was Alabama actually. Is it? Why is this? Anyway, we're having a meltdown on national on TV here. Oh, okay, that's LSU. Yeah. It was against Alabama. 2020. Devontae Smith went off. Anyway, but all that to say that, when you look at the whole body of work, and then Clemson the year before that was the other loss against Trevor Lawrence, and then
This was the Mac
the
Jones
Peach
team.
Bowl. Yeah, and then there was the Peach Bowl where it was that last second field goal. CJ Stroud is hanging for his life. Anyway, so you look at all the games, and outside of the Michigan losses, like those are pretty defensible losses. I mean, you're going against almost all-time great quarterbacks. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, an all-time one of the best, college quarterbacks we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And and then those Alabama teams, and when Devontae Smith having Heisman worthy level of performances and things like that. So while there obviously hasn't been perfect, but when you look at other teams, I think a good comparison was like Texas A&M. And when they were now in the coaching, looking for a head coach, and they had to go, and they thought they were getting, I think it was someone Stoops, Tom Stoops, Bob Stoops, but they were definitely getting a coach they did
Oklahoma
not
guy?
like. Yeah, it was. I think they were about to sign someone else with last name Stoops. I think it was Bob Stoops' son, and instead they went out and got a Duke coach in Elko, who's a good coach, but he's not nearly as great and has a great record as Ryan Day. And so this is almost a point where you ask the fans, would you rather have a couple losses, not be even in the chance to win the college football playoff, but win the game instead of now being still in position to be for the college football playoff? They still made it. Was it last year? Yeah, last year, even though even though they lost to Michigan, chances are it won't happen this year again because there's just too many good contenders. But to still be in, close conversation, I mean, I as an outside observer would rather prefer that. I think it's more wins in general, and I think once the better teams come along to the Big Ten, it'll show even more, the difference between a really, really good coach and, decent coach. I think right now it's just such a big gap between horrible and great that, most of the year Ohio State fans may not pay attention, but once the good teams come and kind of raise the just general play of Big Ten, then there's more room for gray area, and it's easier to be like, oh, Ryan Day is really good. It's just, it's not just because he's playing against, Wisconsin or whatever is in the Big Ten. It's because he's actually a good coach. And so I think there's not many, it's not only that of him being a good coach, but there's just not many options. You just can't go out there and get a coach who's going to almost have a 90% winning percentage, even if it is against bad teams. It's just tough to do. So I think Ryan Day is undervalued, and Ohio State fans, guess what? It sucks. And he did beat Michigan a couple times earlier on. Mm-hmm. So it's not like he never lost or never beat them. So they need to chill. And I don't know, Rev. I mean, on your end, you kind of went through this with Harbaugh. I mean, would you rather, as a fan, win the big game or be in a position to be for the college football playoff? Be in there.
I think both those things probably go hand in hand, right?
I mean, they could. I mean, yeah, but who knows? You get 2 losses, 2 or 3 losses, and then Ohio State, someone gets hurt in the game, and then you beat them, something like that. Like,
oh yeah, okay. So yeah, 2 loss Michigan, but we win the game versus undefeated, maybe lose the game, but have a chance to. And see, you're asking me this now too, after we've won 3 in a row, versus you asked me this, 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. I'm probably just more satisfied with winning the game. Also, just to clean up the thing, it was Mark Stoops that Texas A&M was going after, which I think is Bob Stoops' brother, who has definitely blown up the coaching ranks the last couple of years with his work in Kentucky. And like you mentioned earlier as well, too, Pac-12 championship game is on in the background right now. It is Friday night. And with the way it's looking, if Oregon goes down, the path for Ohio State to get back to the playoff looks a little bit more interesting. We'll see what happens in that Florida State Louisville game. But, the other piece of this too, just like looking big picture with the Ohio State thing is next year, I mean, depending on what happens with McCarthy, they could potentially be back in the upper hand in the quarterback matchup again in the game, with Michigan having to start a new guy. It could be a guy that's already there. Maybe Ojulari, maybe one of the other young guys steps up. Maybe it's like Jaden Davis, a guy that they've recruited, but he's still going to be a young guy. You're going to get McCord returning, who was good this year. I think he had his limitations, but got a year of experience. Should assumedly be better next year. So again, like, he's been losing to Michigan, so I'm probably going to be a little softer on Ryan Day. But for the Ohio State fans, it's got to be a little bit tougher because, Ryan Day is following Urban Meyer. And Urban Meyer isn't just, like, obviously a great coach, but, I mean, we're talking about all time one of the arguably, like, maybe the 10 best college coaches ever to do it. And then just modern era, too, like this century. Maybe I know, like, Kirby Smart's like a young guy still rising up, Dabo Swinney, but as of right now, maybe the second best coach that we've had in I mean, Saban's won up obviously 7 titles this century, but I think Urban Meyer's right behind him with 3. So, I mean, just the expectation for Ryan Day as well, too, to go in and have to, like, follow like we're saying, the second best head coach ever. But Harbaugh on the other side of the matchup, like you were saying, had some of those issues where, you can definitely have good runs, but you also have to be able to, like, establish a program as well, too. And Ryan Day was definitely having a good run at Ohio State when Urban Meyer first left. And maybe he was, carrying a little bit of that momentum. But do you still think he's able to, like, establish a program in the way that he needs to over there? Like you're saying with the other Big Ten teams coming in, like Lincoln Riley at USC, would you rather have, like, Lincoln Riley or Ryan Day going forward?
Definitely Ryan Day. I mean, I think it's been quietly underrated how consistent the teams have been for Ohio State. When you look at USC, I mean, it's kind of, the season's kind of gone really downhill when you look over there, which, may have something to do with the quarterback, but I mean, they're not even ranked. Am I correct on that?
They were definitely in the 20s, right?
Yeah, let's see where they're at.
They're a three-loss team at this point. And I think like you're
Yeah,
saying, that's totally fair because these USC teams, maybe they're not as talented as
I
the
don't think
Ohio
they're
State
ranked.
things, but that's part of it. Yeah, they probably could very well not be,
Yeah.
especially AP versus college football playoff.
Yeah, they lost to UCLA like 38-20. So yeah, their season definitely spiraled out
Oh
of
yeah, they're a five-loss
control.
team right now.
Yeah, they lost their last three games. Six, four, five of the last four, only beating Cal by 1 point. So yeah, let's just say their season really went downhill. Yeah, which is, like we've mentioned, it's just, their division or their conference generally is better, which is another thing of, Pac-12. Another thing to note is that this is their last year being together. And it's crazy to think that, this is last year might be considered their best year, especially since this championship game is the first ever time there's been two top five teams playing in it in the conference championship game. So it's crazy to think that their last year is the year they is their best year and the year they get dissolved. But yeah, back to USC. Yeah, I mean that's Lincoln Riley. It's gone definitely downhill, and especially when you consider how he made it such a superstar team. It was such a big move him from Oklahoma to there, and it's now he's in California. Of course, it's going to move a level up, all the money and stuff. And this is how it's ended up. So I think that's another great point you bring up that Ryan Day has had to follow Urban Meyer. So he's had all this pressure. And obviously with the last couple of years, it is a bit indefensible, especially when you have Stroud that they've lost to Michigan so consistently. But at least this year he does have an excuse of having a new quarterback. You could definitely see the difference between McCarthy and McCord. Just how the experience, things like that. And yeah, I mean, I definitely I just think that Ryan Day, while it's tough to have these losses over and over, I still think he's a top five coach in college football, and it's
I agree.
really hard to find those.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and like I was kind of alluding to earlier, like if you're Ohio State, just sit tight. If I could bet the money line for the game next year at this point, I think Ohio State should be favored in that. Like I was saying, with McCord returning, especially you just think the amount of talent as well that Michigan's going to lose to the NFL. Again, I know there's a lot of depth behind this team. Like Michigan's going to be a competitive team in the Big Ten next year. I'm not saying they're not going to be. Harbaugh, assumedly returns, but
Hopefully.
having McCord is a big advantage, and I think they'll definitely be in a good spot next year going into the game. I think Ryan Day will be fine. And like we're saying, Lincoln Riley was definitely like a darling guy when you get that play caller, and then he's able to recruit Caleb Williams to Oklahoma, get him to transfer to UFC. But I mean, Ryan Day has hit the recruiting thing probably just about as well as Lincoln Riley has. And Lincoln Riley got Malachi Nelson as well, too. So definitely a destination spot for the quarterbacks. And we know that about Lincoln Riley. But I mean, from a play calling standpoint, the offenses that Ryan Day is able to throw out there, like if I could give Harbaugh Ryan Day's offensive mind, like I'd be very, very tempted to do that because the offenses that he throws out there, like a
Yeah.
guy like Lincoln Riley, they're always super quarterback friendly. They always produce. They're always able to accentuate playmakers. And then on the defensive side, I mean, this team continues to be one of the top defenses. They always have at least top defensive playmakers. I know the stats might have been down a little bit this year comparatively, and I think maybe by season's end, they probably averaged out to have a pretty decent year. But you still got a guy like JTT on the defensive edge who is going to be like probably a top 20 pick in the NFL draft this year. So he's still able to get the defensive playmakers, still able to have the successful offenses. So, like you're saying, I mean, if we're just ranking guys, I mean, unfortunately, Harbaugh might be a guy that you take above him. I mean, he is in the top 5, top 6. He's in that conversation. And in terms of coaches that haven't won a national title, I mean, he might be the number one, right? The number one non-national title guy right now, because maybe I guess
Yeah.
Harbaugh might be number one, but he might be number two. Because Smart's won one. I mean, Saban has his, obviously. Dabo has his too. But I mean, Clemson the last couple of years is Ryan Day like catching Dabo to you at all? Is that a close one for you?
I mean, there's still the gap of,
Okay,
Clemson for a couple of years there was up,
they still a tear
right
down.
neck and neck with Alabama, and those were prime Alabama teams. But at the same time, Dabo he did have Deshaun Watson. His teams were, I think, more talented in the situation when you look at the linebacker play as well. I mean, those some of those Clemson teams are, I mean, to be right up there with prime Alabama teams. They're the offense and defense for once clicking.
Yeah,
Um,
that defensive line they had that one year is underrated, where they got
yeah,
like Christian Wilkins, Cleveland Farrell.
it
I know
was
Cleveland
bad.
Farrell, fourth overall pick. Maybe it doesn't work out the way you thought, but they had. Dexter Lawrence was on that line too. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
that is crazy. That yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So there were some scary teams, and yeah, the way it
but I
was,
mean, Day is
it was
close.
a
Day is
trilogy,
like in
right?
that,
3 years in a
but like you're
row.
saying, Day is in that next group down.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And he's definitely pushing to be up there. He's just, it's tough to get people up to Ohio State. He just had a problem of losing a wide receiver, one of the best recruits, and they're going to Miami. It's tough to get people out there. It's an uphill battle, but yeah, I think Ohio State definitely needs to be commended for the way they develop talent. And I do think in this game specifically, Marvin Harrison should have just been used a lot more. There's no reason he shouldn't have had a
How many
Devontae Smith
receptions did
game.
he end up having?
Like that McCord didn't go to him more often is kind of inexcusable. Um,
But hey, I mean, like we said it during the game, he can only throw like 3 passes at this point,
I get it, but that's probably like if I'm looking
unless you want
back
to line him
on
with a tight
one
end.
thing, he had 5 receptions, 118 touch or 118 yards.
But he should have like 12 catches. It should just be okay.
Yeah,
There should be a possession where it's like we're just first down every time is a screen to Marvin Harrison. It is
like
what it is.
I mean, especially when you're down big, like I don't know, and it's not like, and I did think some calls went against Ohio State. Like it's not like it was all,
That's fair.
all, yeah, it wasn't a great day for them.
It was close. They were driving at the end. He gets
Yeah,
pressured, throws a pick. Like they were in a position to win. So
yeah,
they did in a sense do obviously not everything right, but they did most of the stuff that they needed to get themselves in a position. They're playing from behind a lot. They're losing for most of the game, but they're still there.
yeah.
Wouldn't have been shocking, obviously, if they had won either.
Yeah, I don't know. People need to lay off Ryan Day because the world without Ryan Day, Ohio State without Ryan Day is not that much better. And guess what? Then the reputation doesn't matter anymore. Like if you don't have the coach, you don't have the personality, you don't have the structure, like recruits are just gonna go elsewhere. And it's just how it's been with these teams. I mean, you look at Texas A&M, you look at other teams that have had good coaches, it's not, oh my gosh, I got a call from Ohio State, like the Ohio State. And so
Who
yeah,
would they even have to? Who would they even have to bring in
I
to make
don't
Ohio State fans happy?
Nick
Dion?
Saban, like I don't even know. Oh, Dion, oh my gosh. Not after that season he had. Sheesh.
Mm,
What did
it'd be
they
a
how many
close
wins
one.
did they ended up with?
4.
Let's see here. They were 12th in the Pac-12. They were worse. Nope. Yeah, 4-8.
They were at
One
the
and
they
eight
were the
in the
worst team.
conference. They finished with a 6-game losing streak.
It's tough. Worst team in the Pac-12 is tough for a guy Dion.
That's a yikes. That's a yikes. A lot. There were some close games in here too. That Colorado one. Yeah, they didn't win a game since that Colorado State rivalry game back in September.
Colorado State was their last win.
Yeah.
No way. The
Let's see. Oh, they beat Arizona State. They beat the Sun Devils.
okay.
But that was by 3. That's about it. So the beginning of October. So from October to the end of November,
Their
yeah,
last moral victory.
2 months. They completed the no win November challenge, which thankfully not the only team to. We'll get into that later, but